Walking down the street, I overheard some girls say she would never date someone who plays video games. I see the same sentiment shared among many women and online. It feels like video gaming is considered a loser hobby and something I never want to bring up or do, even if I find it fun. Why the stigma? Story 1. A friend of mine plays Valorant 11 hours per day with headphones on. Does not respond to anyone but voice chat. My guess is those are the kind of guys that girls have issues with. Story 2. Well, you have two big issues. 1. The perception of gamer culture and a whole host of issues that come with it. The perception of it as an all-consuming hobby where she will spend a huge amount of her time being ignored by her partner in favor of a screen. This is, to some extent, not that different from how many men in this group talk about women and heavy social media use. It's about the values and priorities associated with it. Story 3. There often isn't a balance. Now, to be honest, I'm a hardcore gamer. I treat games much like some people treat movies, in that I follow developers like some people follow directors. I've often introduced it as such. I didn't find much success differentiating myself while dating by doing that, though. I ended up marrying a woman I found on my Final Fantasy XIV raid team. It just worked out better that way. My cousin is a non-gamer woman who married a guy who plays video games in what most gamers would call a casual manner, but which is the reality for most people who play games. He plays the latest Call of Duty when it comes out, he played 2K games growing up, and he checks out the biggest AAA role-playing games when they hit the mainstream once or twice a year. His wife, my cousin, gives him a hard time for playing video games, but they largely live a functional adult life with a good work-life balance with 2 kids. The whole spectrum of relationships works, but in the general dating market, it's just not going to be something that will set you apart. In fact, it will largely be a detriment to you, even if you try to spin it in interesting ways. I've talked about video games like a movie buff talks about movies, and unless they're already somewhat interested in you, they won't take it as anything more than rambling. My genuine advice is, if this is super important to you, find someone who is at least bought into the hobby a little bit. My wife and I have a shared lexicon and experience that we can draw on, and it makes our conversations more fun, even if we aren't actively playing games together. Story 4. Obviously, this doesn't apply to all gamers, but in my personal experience, I like the idea of dating a guy who is a gamer because I'm pretty introverted and quiet and like my alone time. I liked the idea of having a boyfriend who has his own introverted hobby and imagined it would work out great that we could quietly spend time together doing our own separate things. But then I started dating a gamer guy, and that just wasn't the reality. He spent literally all his time playing video games and had no time for me at all. Even when I managed to get him on the phone once a week, he would be too distracted playing games to even listen to me. He would tell me he was too busy to hang out and then just spend all day playing video games every single day. Like I said, I like my alone time, and it's one thing to want time for yourself to do your own thing and another to basically completely ignore your partner on a daily basis because you'd rather be playing video games instead. Obviously, not every gamer is like this, and it probably isn't exclusive to just gaming as a hobby, but it is something that I kept in mind when dating other guys after that relationship ended. So for me, I don't mind if a guy likes video games. It just becomes sort of a red flag if it's his main hobby or personality trait. Story 5. I play video games. I do not consider myself a gamer since it is not my top priority. I have never had an issue with getting alone time to play a game. But then again, I do not sacrifice attention to my significant other for gaming. I think some women do not like it because of a couple of things. They dated a guy who ignored them for games. They have heard from other women about the above happening to them. They think of guys that play games as nerds, losers, etc. Story 6. I'm 31. I'm old enough to remember when having a podcast meant you were considered a loser and should be banished to a basement. Fast forward, everyone has a podcast, and it's truly amazing to see the culture shift. It's absolutely the same thing with anime, though to a lesser extent. Both have come a long way toward acceptance. There's that, and then there's also the fact that some women love video games. Do your thing, bro. And do it confidently. Life is too short to worry about this kind of stuff. Forget it. Story 7. I'm a woman. I play some video games, and my husband plays them. For me, it's actually kind of required that any guy I'm with plays them. though I do acknowledge that there's a thin line between a gamer and a serious gamer. The latter might be a bit much, but it really depends. Story 8. Because out of any hobby, video games seem to have the most people incapable of balancing time around it. They don't want to date someone who is just going to isolate themselves playing games or prioritize time with their gaming group over their partner. Story 9. Probably because the stereotypical image and behaviors of a gamer are undesirable. If you are attractive and financially stable, she will not care about your video games. Story 10. My girlfriend doesn't mind me playing most nights. I usually start playing around 9 p.m., and that's when she's winding down with a good book and getting ready for sleep. It works out perfectly. Since she gets the weekends off, I spend most weekends doing activities with her. It's not that women hate men who play video games. It's that women dislike when their partner ignores responsibilities, neglects hygiene, and ignores them while playing video games for 7 to 12 hours a day. Story 11. I work in healthcare, have 2 master's degrees, work 48 or more hours a week, and my soon-to-be wife cares less if I play during my downtime. Household duties are split 50-50. For example, I cook, she cleans up afterward. Our days start at various times. I get up at 3 a.m. to go to the gym, she wakes up at 8 a.m., and we have varying times we like to complete tasks. I get all the to-dos done early in the week, she waits until the end of the week. We are very different people but are very compatible in other ways. She made this comparison once. Would you complain about me reading, crocheting, crafting, or having wine with my girlfriends? No, because we are different. I don't complain if you play, read, go to the gym, or watch football or soccer because you enjoy those things. You just need to find someone who understands and accepts your needs, wants, desires, and be willing to do the same for them. Story 12. I lost all of my patience with video games when my screaming baby was at my feet begging to be held or comforted while I was standing over a hot stove making dinner for our family, and my husband at the time couldn't bother to give up his game to help me at all. I finished dinner that night, left the house, and drank my first bottle of wine in my car alone out in the middle of a pasture, enjoying nothing but silence. Story 13. Because some people are obsessed with being productive and never want to take time to enjoy things. If it doesn't make them money, then it's not worth doing. So if they have that mentality, they would probably want someone like them as a partner. There are also all kinds of stigmas attached to gamers, such as misogyny and racism. Story 14. Because of the same thing that happens when I say the words Reddit moderator. You already know the image that popped up in your head. I know it, we all know it. That's what happens. They immediately think of the stereotype without putting any further thought on the matter. Story 15. They do not like guys who play video games, especially those who see gaming as a hobby rather than a pastime or give it high priority. If a woman said her favorite hobby was watching TV for hours while chatting with her friends on the phone, you wouldn't think, great. That is similar to gaming in a headset with your friends for hours most nights. If you play games a bit to unwind in the evening, it is not a big deal. If you make it a frequent priority, it is a big deal. Story 16. Yes, I'm a woman and it's Ask Men. I wouldn't flat out say that I won't date a guy who plays video games, but I would pay close attention to how much of his life it consumes. This is based on my past experience with my ex-husband. He spent all of his free time gaming, frequently pulling all-nighters, where he pretty much lived like a slob in our living room. I am by no means a domestic expert, but there was a day when I was off work and he wasn't. He also had something to go to right after work, like a half hour after. So I made sure I knew what time he was going to be home, what he wanted to wear, suit and tie required, and had dinner ready right when he walked in the door. I also had the suit prepped and hanging in the bathroom so he could eat, shower, change, and be on his way. 2 days later, the same situation occurred, but the roles were reversed. I walked in the door and he was playing video games and, without even bothering to say hello, asked what was for dinner. I had to scramble to get ready and barely had enough time to hit a drive-thru on the way. I won't deal with that nonsense again. Story 17. A lot of stories about guys who do nothing but game, ignore responsibilities, girlfriend, wife, kids. Just game. I think that might be the ones they are talking about. Story 18:1. Addiction. 2. False sense of confidence that has nothing to do with reality. 3. Time killer and escapism. 4. Sedentary lifestyle and not active. 5. Up late all night with a headset on, having not showered in too long. Story 19. Women are fine with guys playing video games. As to why some don't, there's an image attached to gaming of bad hygiene and fitness, poor communication skills, and no other interests. That's the thing women don't like. As long as you have those things down, which you should for yourself anyway, it's not going to be a problem at all. One other thing that helps a lot here is knowing how to make your interests relatable to other people. Again, this isn't exclusive to gaming, but is probably a little more important. So don't worry, it shouldn't be a problem. Story 20. Because it has been a very unwelcoming space to women since forever. It has just been getting better in the most recent years. Couple that with so many guys that let video games take over every hour of their life, and you have a stigma that only losers and children play video games. Story 21. Gaming has become such a part of people's identity. I really do not see the need to identify with it like that. It's something I do in my spare time. It does not define who I am. I don't talk about it the same way I do not talk about TV or the internet or whatever. Story 22. It all depends on the person. There are some gamers who know nothing but gaming, with no time invested in developing any skills that matter in relationships, and I find them as losers. And there are gamers who are well-developed and interesting people whom I value a lot. It depends on the gamer. Story 23. Certain types of women do not. The good thing is women are people, not a monolith. There are plenty who do not mind, and plenty who play themselves. I have never dated a woman who did not play video games. They are a little harder to find, but they are definitely out there. Story 24. My boyfriend plays video games, and I do too. Unless it is someone who puts video games above all their responsibilities and just plays, I do not see how there can be a problem. Story 25. If you only play video games and never want to be social or do fun things she wants to do, then I don't blame a woman for not liking you. However, if you are willing to do these things, I see no problem with playing games. My girlfriend is happy I'd rather play games than drink at the bar or smoke and drink by myself. The problem is I think guys who play video games a lot are hurting their own chances of meeting women. But then again, I'd rather play games and be single than entertain a woman every time I have an ounce of free time, even if I love her. But a gamer will have to compromise his time if he ever wants a girlfriend. The same goes for any personal hobby. I have a cousin who won't get a girlfriend because all he wants to do is work and go to the gym, a true gym enthusiast as some would call it. He wants a girlfriend, or at least did, and has dated some girls. While some were just bad people he dated, some were not. I think his refusal to work a little less and his stubbornness when it comes to compromising some of his time to do things she would like to do cost him a relationship or two. I know he wants a relationship because it hurt him when it ended, but he has to change himself and make time for a woman in his life. Compromise is not always a bad thing if you meet the right woman. Story 26. Because many men neglect their own hygiene and their living spaces, it's easier to see the causal link with gamers. Henry Cavill plays games, and plenty of women like him. I love video games, but I also love living in a clean apartment and not smelling unpleasant. So I vacuum, do the dishes, clean the toilets, brush and floss, never wear the same clothes twice without washing, and shower twice a day because I sweat a lot. Many gamers do, and it can be accommodated. I smell great. So, if a woman says she doesn't like guys who play video games, she might just mean she doesn't like guys who smell unpleasant or those who live in unkempt spaces. Of course, there are plenty of women who are just shallow and immature who actually don't like men who play video games. Or they're insecure and controlling and don't like men who devote a significant amount of attention to anything other than them. But you shouldn't assume. Get to know them and their reasons and then judge them as needed. Story 27. Because there are men who need to play 10 or more hours a day and cannot function as an adult. There are plenty of women out there who think a healthy leisure activity is great. They just do not want someone who is obsessed. Story 28. I am an avid gamer and I am also a girl. As long as someone has a job, takes care of their responsibilities, personal and household, has goals and hobbies, and all of those are balanced without one consuming the other, I see no issues at all. Story 29. So, the shortest answer of all. Hobbies and activities a person can partake in can be divided into two groups: world and people influencing, solitary and escapist. The first group includes most types of sports, music, and cars. These are things you do in public that impress and impact people around you. The second group includes games, tinkering, and model building. You can perform them alone without anybody and still be fulfilled and satisfied. Women are more likely to prefer men who are able to influence and impact the world around them. Therefore, hobbies that are not typical for that are less attractive. Your mileage may vary. Story 30. The rule about gamer nerds. When they are good, they are great. Often funny, intelligent, and willing to please. It is just that too often, they fall into obsession and cannot pull themselves from their games long enough to help around the house or care about anything or anyone else, including their own health, and put forth effort in relationships. Treat it as an actual hobby and not as your entire world and life, and women will not have any issues with you. Sincerely, a woman married to a gamer.